Thanks for the good photograph, which is the, the foundation behind that.
Yeah, my friends really love it. Yeah, love the structure, yeah, and the
Yeah,
pattern
you are
and
live
everything.
now.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, a very warm welcome to all our viewers. So, we at the Center for Constitutional Law and Policy, Parul Institute of Law, we keep on organizing a whole lot of programs, various expert talks, guest talks, and we have been doing it actually rigorously for some time now. So today we have got a very unique topic, that is quantizing the geo-economic order, the great reset of national security. So very fascinating topic we have got for today. And in order to deliver the address on this particular topic, we have got an equally fascinating resource person with us, Miss Sinua Lee, who I'll just give a brief introduction of hers. She started her PhD at Durham Law School in October 2020, supervised by Professor Tom Brooks and Professor Ming Du. She is the PGR's course representative. She teaches tutorials for undergraduates. She is also an event host at Ustinov Cafe Politique. Prior to her PhD, Sinua started the Grand Exploration in Law at Suzhou University in Sins, where she graduated with a first class LLB and a provincial distinction dissertation. She then pursued her passion for international law and obtained her first LLM in international public law with distinction at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, and a second LLM in international economic law with first class honor from East China University of Political Science and Law in Shanghai, China. She has published on the WTO security exceptions in relation to the US China trade war and global administrative law. She has also presented her research at Durham Law School Postgraduate Annual Conference and Leicester Law School Postgraduate Research Conference. Her current interest is to travel quantum theories from physics to law. And yes, she is going to talk about it today as well. So, Sinua, a very warm welcome to you. Really happy to have you with us today here at Parul Institute of Law. The session is all yours.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are and what time it is. So before I share my screen, I just want to say hi to all of you. I'm Sinua Lee from Durham University in UK, and it is my great pleasure to be a guest speaker at this webinar hosted by the Center for Constitutional Law and Policy at Paru Institute of Law. And also thank you, Mr. Ansari, for having me here and for trusting my research, which is very controversial. And thank you for your very thoughtful introduction and all of your works to prepare for this webinar. And so also I would like to thank you to all of our audience. And it seems that we share a common passion for very controversial topics. Well, let's face it, national security, geoeconomic order, quantum series, to figure out even one of them is very difficult and exhausted. How on earth do they fit together? How do they even make sense? And most importantly, this theoretical framework, which I am going to introduce today and hoping to spend a couple of years on, is it feasible that it can contribute to our knowledge on some level? And now I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully you will see it very soon. Yes, I have done that. Can everybody see it?
It's visible, yes.
So let's begin our journey together. Please look at the slide. Look at the title for my research, Quantizing the Geoeconomic Order, the Great Reset of National Security. It is definitely a combo of very complex terms. And the way to understand it is, first, there is a great reset on national security issues in international economic practice, which is a representative phenomenon of all the emerging geoeconomic order, or we call it the geoeconomics. And second, we will use elementary quantum theories to study the emerging geoeconomics. what are its definitions, what are the challenges and implications, specifically in international economic law. In today's almost 38 minutes, I will cover three basic issues. First, whether geoeconomics could adequately explain the reconciliation between national security and economic liberalization after 2016, and is geoeconomics qualified as a paradigm shift? Second, why we choose a quantum worldview to study geoeconomics, and have there established any level of research foundation? And also, how would we use elementary quantum theories to interpret geoeconomic challenges of international law and global governance in the global economic order? Please keep in mind that what I'm going to share in today's very limited 14 minutes is only a rudimentary demonstration of the theoretical framework that I will use for further research. I hope by doing so, it will open your legal mind to science and social science world, which, let me tell you, are fascinating, illuminating, but of course, very, very frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. We have a saying in China that you hate how less your knowledge you have learned when you are actually using it. And this is definitely one of these situations. And we also have a saying that through you a break in order to get a gem. I sincerely hope that by my introduction, you will find your own mind-blowing ideas. So first, let's focus on the first question on geoeconomics. In the last 5 years, we have witnessed the heated confrontation between national security and the global economy. In international trade, national security exception has become the popular choice for unilateral actions. Russia invoked the security exception of GATT to justify its restrictions imposed on Ukraine in 2016. Saudi Arabia used the same excuse for their blockade of Qatar in 2017, and Qatar retaliated in 2019. Also, as you all know, in 2018, the US invoked the security exception to initiate the trade war with the rest of the world. The international investment domain is no picnic either, if you are wondering. States subject foreign investment to strict screening because of national security concerns. This year, the US established the Clean Network Alliance to ban Huawei's investment in more than 40 countries and regions. Such hostility forces divestment around the world. All of these are only a tip of the iceberg of the disintegration of neoliberalism, or as I call it, a neoliberal interest-oriented organic system. The neoliberal order had dominated our world from the 1980s to almost the 20s to 2000s. And basically everything we learned comes from neoliberalism. It had become more than just an economic policy, but an underlying philosophy that organized and rewarded these policies and reached beyond the market. It was truly a grand constructivist project for the world. For example, states negotiated international laws in favor of multilateral economic cooperation and restrained their invocation of domestic protection regulations. And governments promoted economic development with scarce consideration for the democratic will of the people, human rights, social values, cultural diversity, and environmental protection, deeming these matters irrelevant or essential. It even extended to the individual level when the cost-benefit analysis portrayed humans as having the infinite ability to make rational decisions by calculus to maximize interest in the most efficient way. And economists took this homo economicus as an idealized decision-making model. And there are also many famous comments on neoliberalism. For example, Margaret Thatcher said there is no such thing as a society under neoliberalism. And also Wendy Brown, a renowned international relations scholar, remarked that all contemporary existence is submitted to an economic rationality. Neoliberalism was truly an interest-oriented organic system, in a sense that it did not only offer an ontology that all aspects of human life could be reduced to calculus, but also made its involvement and legalization an ongoing task for the world for almost 30 years. Like all great theories that once dominated our world, neoliberalism has gradually come to its end in the last decade. We are not arguing that liberalism and cosmopolitanism are no longer desirable and completely out of the picture. But we are suggesting that the breakdown of neoliberalism also reveals the rising of a new order that needed exploration. Let's remind ourselves of these many cases we mentioned at the beginning when states reclaim national security protection at the cost of multilateral cooperation. What does the confrontation between national security and the global economy demonstrate? It demonstrates the emerging of geo-economic order, which can be understood as the use of economic power to serve state strategic plans. Geo-economics weighs a hyphen was a neologism created by Edward and Lutrox in 1990 to describe the exact mixture of the logic of conflict in the grammar of commerce, meaning that contemporary conflicts between nations are engaged in the world economy on the premise of territorial sovereignty. The hyphen combined two conditions, so geo represents states' territory, indicating that nations in world affairs acted under boundaries concerns that derives from the logic of conflict. Nations use their power under the logic of conflicts that there are some adversary and paradoxical, meaning that one side's gain was another side's loss, and the adversaries reacted in against with what was being done. So nations, as territorial entities, would not and could not follow a pure commercial logic that had no consideration on territorial boundaries and pursued transnational economic prosperity. Economists means that rather than military power, economic power was a determinant for nations in world politics. Combine these two terms together, Lutrox demonstrates that the world economy had become nations' primary arena of power competition. And the priority for nations when entering this competition was not multilateral cooperation to achieve common interest, but economic security and the development within their territorial boundaries. Based on the nuanced linkage between geo and economics, we summarize three characteristics of the Lutrox Geo-Economic proposition. First, the logic of conflicts underlies geo-economics, which added complicated considerations on power relationships and states terrorists to the logic of commerce. And second, intended regulatory obstacles, economic significant technologies, and application standards and conditions of technologies would be utilized and manipulated as powerful weapons in the geo-economic world. And third, the international stage was primarily occupied by states and regions, and the outcome of the economic tension within the principal states and regions would determine the degree of the geo-economic order. As you can see, this is a very nuanced terminology. However, scholars did not sophisticatedly research geoeconomics until the disintegration of the neoliberal interest-oriented organic system became prevailingly convincing after 2016. This pattern is supported by statistics of published articles. For example, when searching geoeconomics in all databases of High Online, 510 articles came out, and 226 of them, which is the 44.3% of the total, were published after 2016, indicate the rising theoretical and normative potential of the emerging geoeconomics in international relations and international law. In addition, in the research after 2016, the geoeconomics with a hyphen was advanced to geoeconomic theory without a hyphen to highlight a close interrelation between state sovereignty and economic policies in the emerging theory. Geoeconomics also closely linked with other international relations theories, such as international political economy and geopolitics. And we won't elaborate on this part today, But one skill or request for any academic writing is that we have to write something about where is any theory coming from and who are its relatives in our paper. So please keep that in mind. Now back to our topic. As I am saying, geoeconomics was investigated after the breakdown of neoliberalism, which became very obvious up to 2016. And so far, scholars like Ansel Roberts, Harlan Grant Cohen, Serge Buch, and Mikhail Wijal have identified the entering of a geoeconomic order and recognize that the degree of geoeconomics is totally determined by the tension between the US and China. However, there are many gaps and problems here. For example, could the emerging of geoeconomics qualified as a paradigm shift? Because if it is probably needs more research to find out what are the implications of such shift, and also whether the definition from 1990s actually fit into current situation. And also, geoeconomics is underpinned by the logic of conflicts, but its geoeconomics only have competitive potential. How can a cooperative geoeconomics or any other kinds of geoeconomics contribute to our new world order? And also, do states besides the US and China have different preferences on the geoeconomics? And how do they exercise on the geoeconomics in national security issues, in international economic practices? If they do exercise geoeconomics, then whether they choose different strategies for different economic sectors, such as critical technology industries, and also some pandemic-related problems. So down to earth, we really need to study each one of them, because if geoeconomics turns out to be a paradigm shift for the global economic governance, then everything in the next 20 years, which I am underselling it, will change under the influence of geoeconomics. So is geoeconomics qualified as a paradigm shift? Before we answer this question, we have to find out what does the phrase paradigm shift mean. Thomas Kuhn, by studying similar developmental stages in science, introduced the concept of paradigm shift in 1962. He proposed that a field of study matured by forming a paradigm, a set of guiding laws, theories, methods, and applications that were accepted and agreed upon by relevant communities. The paradigm, usually meticulously recounted in our textbooks, offers coherent traditions and foundations for further research. It then leads to a period of normal science when research accumulated to explore the practical implications of the formed paradigm. Then anomalies come along, which means findings that differ from paradigms induced expectations. Once enough anomalies fail to fit into the paradigm, the field enters an existential crisis that can only be resolved by a revolution. And revolution brings us a new paradigm that addresses all those anomalies. And this is described as a paradigm shift. It is a complete change of the worldview, and scientists and individuals work in a totally different world ever after. This whole process repeats by a new season of normal science, depicting a cyclic nature of the research progress. So in a very short version, a paradigm shift happens when a disciplinary crisis is looming due to the distinctive anomalies of normal science. So do you think geoeconomics qualified like a paradigm shift? And I believe each one of you may have your own answers, but in my research, the answer is positive. Geoeconomics is a paradigm shift for the global economic order. Let's look at the figure on the slide again. It's a context of the global economic order. Before the emerging geoeconomics, neoliberalism was a paradigm for the global economy, as we discussed earlier. Neoliberalism emerged towards the end of the 1970s, following with the normal science phase of neoliberalism roughly between the 1980s to the 2000s. And adhering to this paradigm, states pursued liberal economy and multilateral cooperation. And scholars studied neoliberal implications and proposed plans to solve problems caused by it, which is the normal science phase, as we talked. Anomalies occurred in the course and outburst after 2016. So on the micro level, principal economies prioritize security interests over multilateral cooperation, initiating national security regimes on a very large scale. And on the macro level, powerful states backlash against liberal cosmopolitanism and retreat into nationalism and unilateralism. These actions violate the neoliberal expectation to a great extent and situate international economic order under serious accusations of unjust, unfair, politicized, and lack of human rights considerations. Global economic order, constituted by international economic relations, international economic law, and global governance, is, or at least be suspected to be, in acute crisis. Then geoeconomics is adopted to make sense of these violations and transform the crisis into challenges that could be triumphed. We may call geoeconomics a revolutionary theory as it demonstrates a change of course in the global economy. It explains the resurgence of regional powerhood that is underpinned by economic competition. And the geoeconomic reset, therefore, qualified as a paradigm shift for the global economic order. There are some scholars argue that geoeconomics are still in its infant phase. And of course, but we need to offer a benefit of the doubt for geoeconomics. As we all know, neoliberalism, it took it almost 30 years to become something like an organic system. So geoeconomics at this stage will not be a perfect theory to all solutions. As we regarded geoeconomics, the paradigm shift that have far-reaching implications, we have to choose a method, a framework to research geoeconomics. There are absolutely infinite ways to study a paradigm shift like geoeconomics, and we choose a quantum worldview because it appears to be the furthest approach in physics. It is surprisingly close in international relations and friendly to international law. Moreover, there is nothing more exhilarating, which combines excitement and also may highlight fear, than stepping foot into the no man's land. We expect strong objections from science, who argues that quantum theories can only operate on the subatomic level, and also from social scientists who underestimated quantum theories as mere metaphors, and even from legal scientists who dismiss the idea of applying physics theory to law and order. But at this stage, I admit, we only operate on possibilities. Since quantum theories have already been scaled up to biological and cognitive levels, quantum metaforms have been studied to have very far-reaching implications, and quantum politics and quantum-based technologies are challenging our current world order and our understanding and human reactions on a daily basis. Possibilities may have potentially revolutionary outcomes. The way of borrowing quantum theories to make sense of human interaction is proven to be a rising star. International scholars in the recent decades have made great attempts to quantize IR to the extent that IR field is going through a permanent quantum revolution. The latest work of James Duran and Alexander Wins called for debate on the virtues of quantum theories of international relation, especially on international security matters. They also call for explorations on collectively building a quantum future. And this research is conceived out of these propositions. Building on scholars' contribution in IR, we wish to explore the potential of a quantum worldview in international law, in the sense of analogically applying the fundamental quantum theories to understand the geoeconomic paradigm shift of global economic order, which is presented by the resurgence of security exception. Specifically, we demonstrate the great reset of national security in the emerging geoeconomic order by applying quantum metaforms. So in brief, we employ quantum theories to interpret the paradigm shift of geoeconomics. Before we actually apply quantum theories to international laws, we have to build a basic sense of the quantum worldview by answering three questions. First, what are the elementary theories of a quantum worldview and why are they crucial? Second, how quantum theories traveled from science to social science? And third, how have quantum metaforms been adopted in law? Now let's enter the quantum world. Please do not be afraid of those pictures and figures. I am no scientist at all, just like you guys. I'm also a law school student, so I will try to make quantum theories as simple as possible. The advent of quantum theory on 14 December 1990 revolutionized the physics understanding of reality. In the following century, physics produced three unorthodox theories, specifically quantum entanglement, measurements, and holidom. Quantum entanglements establishes that the observation of an object can immediately influence the behavior of another object at a great distance without requiring the use of any physical force. It proves that the near simultaneous interconnectivity creates entanglements and highlights how this produces spillover effects and butterfly effects. On the slides, the first picture on the left is the first picture that ever took by a human that proves the effect of entanglement, which is an object is influenced by another in great distance with no physical force whatsoever. Quantum measurements, which is also known as observer effect, reveals that the physics reality is created by human observation. Observations have many probabilities, but quantum probabilities, which are known as wave function, constantly change with different potentials, just like the middle picture. Observations therefore make the wave function collapse to just one outcome when we observe. And the observer of effect challenges the claim that people can safely assume that objects only have one position when they are not observing. The third theory on the right, quantum holidom, assesses that the structure of reality is dualist. There is an ordinary level of reality and a superposition level of reality, and all existence is unified. So the holographic ontology established that an object is part of the whole while it simultaneously contains the whole. So to put it more simpler, a part equals a whole. It eases tensions between quantum mechanics and the general relativity theories by proposing that the universe is a holographic projection. What appears on the surface is encoded information about what's in the inside. The quantum worldview formed on the basis of these three theories substantially challenges Newtonian classical physics and violently conflicts with human intuitions. I know, I feel the same as just as you. And also Albert Einstein, one of the founders of quantum theory, even rejected quantum entanglement as spooky action at a distance, and quantum measurements with observation that God does not play dice with the universe. But 80 years of exploration and experiment have established that quantum theories as a base of modern science. Not one of the theory predictions have been wrong, and 1/3 of the global economy depends on quantum-based inventions. Indeed, it has even been claimed that the quantum worldview applies to everything. Now, let's see how science traveled to social science and to law. The application of science to social science is nothing new. Before the quantum revolution, Newton's classical physics, which he established after being inspired by a fallen apple during the Great Plague, was the paradigm for all subsequent intellectual endeavors. The classical physics paradigm rests on a materialist ontology that claims reality is ultimately made up by matters and energy and is governed by fundamental laws. On this basis, Auguste Comte invented the sociology as a form of social physics that regarded people as social atoms unmotivated by force. Adam Smith introduced the Newtonian physics to the economy and contended that an invisible hand, as a fundamental law of political economy, governed society in the interest of the general good. And Karl Marx also proposed that the economy works like a machine and suggested a future communism would emerge absolutely from the capitalism of his time. Samuel Floyd draws on classical physics to establish psychology as a natural science. The encounter between quantum mechanics and consciousness encourage scholars to expand the quantum worldview beyond science and apply it to social science. For example, constructionists propose that social life is governed by the laws of quantum physics rather than the laws of classical physics. In asserting that human beings are quantum systems, they propose that social life, therefore, requires a quantum framework for its proper understanding. Conservatives, meanwhile, choose an analogical approach to quantum social science and adopted quantum theories as a tool to explain human and social complexity. Analogies were used, including those between social interdependence and quantum entanglement, observer effect and quantum measurement, free will and wave function collapse, and double entry accounting and quantum information. Political scientists use these quantum metaphors to understand political crisis, power distribution, policy making, and the most well-known one, international relations. We call them quantum IR. In legal science, quantum theories have been examined from two perspectives. First, researchers have used quantum metaphor to explore the linkage between quantum worldview and contemporary legal improvements. International law scholars have drawn an analogy between quantum entanglement and international cooperation, and have, in doing so, highlighted the interaction between states. Practitioners compared this making and application of law to quantum measurements on the basis that new legislation contains very much unknown qualities that are impossible to predict until a judicial observation is actually forthcoming. Jurisprudence used quantum holism to investigate the universal basis of legal economies, human rights, feminist, and critical legal studies. The second perspective is a much more common one, and I think all of you already have guessed, is to investigate the emerging legal impact of advanced quantum-based technologies on the military and civil industries, including in the areas of quantum computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain networks, and even biotechnologies. So, as we discussed so far, quantum mechanics is a fundamental theory of physics, and it is not going to vanish anytime soon. The central question is therefore how well it can adapt to a non-scientific setting. There are good research foundations here, as we have demonstrated that the traveling of quantum theories from science to social science and to law. We're here to explore how well the quantum worldview translates to the international order, with focus on the paradigm shift of the emerging geoeconomics, which is represented by prioritizing security interests in international economic practice. I won't go into details here due to the time limits, but I hope I could explain these elegant figures and pictures in one of our future webinars. So my audience and Mr. Ansari, it's up to you to decide whether we can go into these details sometime in the future. Today, I'm going to give you a simple and open-ended demonstration of how I use quantum theories to interpret the international order. Basically, I evaluate the features, vulnerabilities, and attempts to reform or remake international law in the geoeconomic order by using three rudimentary theories of quantum worldview. Here are my research outcomes. In accordance with the quantum entanglement theory, world affairs are deeply interconnected with complexities in a geoeconomic reality. And this cannot be reversed in an environment where economic globalization and the technological evolution prevail. A complete deglobalization as part of a backlash against the liberal cosmopolitanism would be unpredictable and could cause incalculable damage to every global actor. Two structural vulnerabilities of the geoeconomics order, specifically the globalization paradox and the robust power illusion, can be adequately processed under the quantum measurement theory. Changes in the world order are not preordained, and the result can only be observed when people actively engage. There are all sorts of probabilities for the next stage of the global order, such as competitive geoeconomics, cooperative geoeconomics, and many other possibilities. And the positive framing of questions will most likely produce answers that are opportunities. The quantum Holidom theory suggests that the prerequisite for understanding geoeconomics and its implication is to collectively examine economic regulatory developments at the national, regional, and international levels. Enfoldment and unfoldment show that international law and global governance for global economy are still alive and well to some extent, which is nothing like some scholars suggested. So after almost 33 minutes of brainstorming on these very controversial topics, we have answered 3 research questions we proposed at the beginning. We initially introduced the heated confrontation between national security and economic liberalization after 2016, and subject this rising phenomenon to geoeconomics, a theory adopted by states to use economic power to their strategic plans. As a theory that makes sense of states' drastic violation against the neoliberal order, the emerging geoeconomics is qualified as a paradigm shift for global economic law. When we then adopt a quantum worldview to study this paradigm shift, admitting its disadvantages and drawbacks, we operate on possibilities that may lead to revolutions. These possibilities were shown by previous research and literature, which established a research foundation for transferring quantum theories from science to social science and then onto legal science. Lastly, we propose that the geoeconomic order can be interpreted by using theories of the quantum worldview, specifically quantum entanglement, measurement, and holidom. Due to the time limit today, we only talk about the findings. So in common with quantum entanglement, what affair in the geoeconomic order displayed interconnectivities and complexity. It is not an option to completely reject the liberal cosmopolitanism and the globalization. Moreover, two structure vulnerabilities of the geoeconomic order, which are the globalization paradox and the robust power illusion, could be mitigated by the quantum measurement theory. And furthermore, mirroring the quantum holidom suggests that international law and global governance are still alive and well to an extent, and that the proper approach to tackle the failure of international law and the collapse of global governance in a global economic order is to investigate issues from international, regional, and domestic levels. In short, we establish a theoretical framework today. So on the first level, geoeconomics as a paradigm shift explain the intensified confrontation between national security and economic liberalization after 2016. On the second level, a quantum worldview includes quantum theories of entanglements, measurements, and holidom, interprets the geoeconomic reset of international law and global governance in the global economic order. In my following research, I will apply and assess this framework by closely investigating national security issues in the geoeconomic order, focusing on issues related to critical technologies and the pandemic. Before I end my part, again, I want to highlight the key to my presentation today. I'm not here to instill this very complicated framework, and I am also not here to impart the wisdom of any kind. The only aim is to invite you to think about the possibilities of applying science theories, social science theories to law and order. There is some research has been done already, but it is far from enough. The legal discipline still remains to be somehow self-centered, self-explained, and a bit cut from the outside. The pro is obviously that our job is very safe, that nobody can actually replace us. But the con is that we may fall behind the time and ignore what is going on in the outside of the world and stop thinking outside of our legal box. These whole negativities will actually undermine our mission of expanding the outreach of law. So could there be a quantum future in international law? Could there be a behavioral future in law? Could there be any other kinds of future in legal science? The burden falls on all of you and all of us, our future legal generations, to explore, to imagine, and to open our mind. So thank you very much for today. And now I welcome all questions and comments.
So that was really a fascinating session. When we talk about geoeconomics, we invariably connect it to geopolitics as well. So a general kind of a question I would like to ask you is that, is it possible for someone, some state, to be a geo-economic power without essentially being a geopolitical power? Not going into the military aspects of it, but simply speaking, a geopolitical power. Is that possible? Do you see that happening, or can you lay down a dichotomy between geoeconomics and geopolitics? What's your take on that, Sinwa?
This question actually relates to our definition of geoeconomics. So basically, from at this stage, geopolitics, including measures of military force, as you just said. However, geoeconomics is only peaceful operation of the economic power, which is kind of like the Cold War, but no military power is any kind of involved. So basically, geopolitics and geoeconomics are all operating in the world now. However, between US and China, we would consider geoeconomics more. And also in most part of the world, economics acting like a key arena for state competition. And we often call that statecraft. Thank you. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you see any place for a protectionism kind of a policy in this entire realm?
It actually depends on how we understand the protectionism, right? So if protectionism is only that protect our national security interests, which I have to highlight that there is an expansion of the concept of national security. And we are now facing many vulnerabilities and challenges posed by economy, security, cybercrime, and also pandemic, and there are very much non-human actors, for example, the environment and many other things. So if the key to protection them is to protect our national security, which governs all the things I discussed, then I do not see protectionism is like a negative phrase. But if this kind of protectionism actually means offending other states' interest on any level, especially in a very great level, then that kind of protecting them may hurt our international legal order. Yeah.
Right. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah. Any questions? Anyone? You can just raise your hand and I'll let you speak.
Yes.
Simran, Sohil, Sri Soumya. Yes, Simran, you may go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about geostrategy, like where it goes, what does it actually means? It is just confined in geostrategy, meaning military power, or it includes geopolitics also.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I cannot hear you very clearly. Sorry.
Okay. Am I audible now? I want to ask about geostrategy. Like geopolitics is different from geostrategy, or they are both same. Is geo strategy only talking about the military power? Like this is my question.
Yeah, thank you for your question. As we just said before, so geopolitics focus on the military use and the use of military power to gain some geostrategic advantages. However, the geoeconomics means that we only use economic power, for example, the use of the standards and conditions of certain imports and investments. And for example, there is also national security scrutiny process to make sure that this is kind of the investment that our country wants, but that is not. Yeah, that is why we always talk about the cybersecurity, and we talk about why Huawei's 5G network is banned for in the 40 countries and regions. And the other term you just used, geostrategy, I think it actually encompasses all of these strategies concerning the territorial boundaries, which is centered by state sovereignty, national security protection, and also the protection of the state itself instead of the international cooperation. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Can we say that? Sooner or later there would be no military war, but the whole war would be constrained in this internet world? Like the war would be hacking and everything, and not just the military war in future. Like robotic things will come and all.
Thank you. It is absolutely a very interesting question. And I mean, it is not very wise to predict the future, but I think it's safe to say that based on our situation that we observe right now, most states in the world have exercised restraint when it comes to any form of war, especially the cyber crime. We talk about that today's situation between the US and China rivalry, something like the Cold War situation, which is good because it shows that the two powerful states are actually restrained from using military power. And so I do not know whether in the future there is a kind of hacking between states, but I sincerely wish they won't happen. Just for the sake of all the human beings. I mean, we are actually a very, very bonded community, and the economics can only develop when there is world peace. And we actually agree that we want that. That is the key. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
My question was, what do neoliberal reforms say about the purpose of schoolings and the education system going on today? Like, how does it impact?
You mean neoliberalism, right?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I just asked whether you mean neoliberalism or
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So with regard to the education system, so basically, most of the countries, including China, we somehow like perceived education as an industry, in a sense that it is a way that our governments and the university institutions have gained some profit. So underlying that is a philosophy of neoliberalism, that individual, firstly students, acting as a rational economist people. That, for example, they have to calculate which school provide their most interest. To go there, they gain the most education resources, and they have the best teachers and professors. However, that place, that institutions cannot offer that kind of resources. So this kind of calculation in our mind, that is a sign of neoliberalism from the individual level. So from institutional level, we see that as an industry, that is a sign of neoliberalism. And from the individual level, that students have to calculate based on many factors of the education resources, the professors, the institutions, and all the infrastructures. All that come from neoliberalism.
Any other questions?
Not from my side. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Yeah. You have to like open your mind to see this neoliberalism thing. It is not basically just an economic policy. It is actually have already creeping into every aspect of your life. And I am not over exaggerating here. It is actually very, very much true. And the people in our nature right now, we are always pursue the profit and interest. No matter it's in money, investment, or education, or whatsoever. The worst competition within people is the competition of resource. That is neoliberalism. Yes. And that is why we often forget about social values and forget about the importance of community and forget of animal protection and environmental protection and human rights protection. And this is very, very bad, So that is why there are a lot of scholars starting to talk about just, unfair, and just unhuman in many other ways. And that is why we are now trying to build a better future. But I mean, it is very hard, but neoliberalism has already permeated our world in 30 years. And to change from this kind of mindset to another kind of mindset that actually are value oriented, it is very, very hard and it needs fighting of generations and generations. Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed this question.
It's fascinating that how much a basic social science like political science is actually inherently related to the understanding of geoeconomics itself. And
Hi, I'm sorry, your screen is froze. Or is it just me?
No, actually, I think it's from his side.
Network problem, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Then anybody else have any questions or any issue they want to discuss until Mr. Ansari is back?
None?
Yes, I can hear you.
Might be a personal question, but what attracted you in this field? Like, what was your inspiration or motivational drive which attracted you towards neoliberalism?
You mean what is my inspiration to study the rising of geoeconomics by quantum series? Is that your question?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes. So basically, there is a lot of going on in the world, especially after 2016. For example, the U.S.-China trade war, and this kind of competition is what fascinates me, because obviously the U.S. is an empire, and obviously China is rising. But two countries with completely different ideologies and social values and mindset and cultural background, how can they peacefully accepted each other and embrace each other in the future world is absolutely mystery. And we have seen, yes, we have, I'm sorry, back. Yeah, sorry, we just lost you.
yeah, I'm so sorry. So
Yeah,
I was saying that it's really fascinating how uh, a very basic branch of social science like political science is so much inherently related to the understanding of geoeconomics itself.
yeah,
And in a few slides of yours whereby you mentioned from science to social science, and you quoted the ideology of someone like an Adam Smith or Sigmund Freud, for that matter. So it's really interesting that how each of these things are related. Like me being, of course, primarily I'm a student of law and a research scholar, so on and so forth, but you tend to restrict your sometimes your understanding to your subject of specialization. So you think of constitutional law, you think of public law, and things like political science. So it's really exciting how it all connects. So like your thesis will be really fascinating to an extent if it has got elements of what you laid down in today's session. So I believe a lot of empirical research would also go down as a part of your entire framework.
thank you. Yes, I also find that it is very fascinating to find that we actually have this kind of mindset coming from physics, but it's subconscious that we never know of. But actually, yes, that is where it's all come from. So I think the quantum series as in my future research. So firstly, I'm going to use this kind of theoretical framework to assess national security's reclaiming in issues like critical technologies, quantum technologies, and also the cyber, right? The cyber area, the internet, and also the internet security part. So this is a very major key point that I'm going to focus on. And the second point is I would love to discuss how pandemic is changing our world in a sense that we do not think and react the same way before the pandemic. And this kind of change is very much like quantum theories that you never know of. But yes, it is actually influencing your life. And there are many possibilities, and there is many butterfly effect that you cannot see by your eye. But yes, everything is complex and interconnected in every little ways. And yeah, these are the current like situation that I'm going to research more in the next step. And regarding to the last question that we are actually discussed is that what is my inspiration to talk about geoeconomics and also quantum series? So first, geoeconomics is a very popular frame that we use right now to make account of the changing of world order, especially the US-China rivalry and the resurgence of national security protection, and also the backlashes against international law and international order. So geoeconomics is the first and foremost important framework to think about. But as I said, it is very new and it is still in its infancy, in a sense that the definition is not very clear. And there is no analytic tools have been established. So I think my research can contribute in this area. So that is regarding geoeconomics. And the second is regarding quantum theories. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm always fascinated about science, but it's such a pity that I can never be a scientist, I'm so bad at math. But I do think that, but I know a lot of anecdotes about Newton and Einstein and quantum series, and I also watch a lot of TV series such as a Big Bang Theory, which is talk about physics and how they thrive in their work and how they interact with normal world. So my inspiration actually come with a book written by Alexander Wentz, which is an international relations scholar who have spent the recent 5 or 6 or more years on how to travel quantum physics from science to social science in a way that he proposed human are actually
the title of the book,
structures.
if you can tell us the title of the book.
Social science. Yeah, one moment. I will send you after the. Would you mind? Yeah.
Okay.
I will send you after. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that book is actually what I was like, yeah, that is something I want to learn, and that is something that no legal people have already been dabbed into. And also, as you know, the way that you can use some new series means that here comes your creativity and innovativity, right? And think about national security, which is a very, very old-fashioned topic. I mean, yeah, national security. So you have to juice things up by new frameworks and new series. Yeah, so that is my inspirations why I go for geoeconomics and then I go for quantum series, and now I try to combine them together to create a theoretical framework to interpret national security issues in international economic law. I know it is very controversial and very, very hard, and I struggled on a daily basis.
Yeah, maybe there would be an element of artificial intelligence
Yeah.
in there as well. So it's quite dynamic on the face of it. So thank you so much. I guess we have run out of time, Sinua, for taking out the time for us and delving into a whole new topic, a whole new dimension for us, so that we can explore. We at least got a taste of this particular topic, so that our viewers who are there right now in the Zoom session, those who are watching us on Facebook Live, they can explore this topic. And once you go through this topic, like once I set up this session with you, I actually, to be honest, read about geoeconomics. I had a rough idea about it, but still, to be honest, to be the host for the session, you at least need to know it yourself a little. So I did my some preliminary research, and hope that you would explain it nicely. And thank you so much for taking this such an fascinating session. I believe it's time for you in Beijing for the evening tea. So thank you so much. Have a nice day. Thanks a lot for taking out the time.
Thank you, Mr. Ansar, and thank you for all my audience. And have a nice day.